Hey, boys and girls, it's Nancy A. Shenker, also known as the geezerproofer. So just to clarify, a geezer is somebody who is stuck, who resists change, who's kind of a couch potato, who grumbles a lot about how the world is changing and transforming. And a beezer is somebody who be in the moment, be relevant, be active, and you could be a geezer or a beezer at any age. But for the purposes of this podcast, I focus primarily on people over 50 because as people age, they sometimes do get stuck. My guest today is not over 50.
Oh, so you think.
An old soul. And I've wanted to do this episode for a while. It is all about shelter, which is one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs elements. So everybody needs a roof of some kind over their head, even if the roof is a tarp and they're sleeping on a piece of cardboard in the street. So shelter is really, really important to us. And home, the old adage, home is where the heart is. People think a lot about home and where they live. So today's guest is Nick L to Will. Did I get that right?
L to Will. You said it right.
L to Will. Excellent. I just keep thinking to will to live, which is kind of punny because we're talking about housing. And we met at a Pod Populi party.
That's right.
A lot of P's in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the queen of alliteration. And you are in real estate. And
yes.
Even though you are not quite 50 yet, you've had a really interesting background in terms of the brokerages that you've worked for. So let's start out talking a little bit about where you've worked, who you've worked for, and what you're doing now.
So I got into real estate when I was living in New York City. So I went to New York City for college. I had some friends, their family, well, his family, owned many buildings in the city. And I just had the idea that, hey, these would be good people to know. I was thinking, do I want to go into finance? Do I want to go into real estate? I ended up going with real estate just on, hey, I know these guys, they're in real estate. Maybe I should just go with this. And I just went with it. So I got a lot of experience at a very young age, which was very good for me. But, New York being New York.
Yeah, New York real estate is tough. I mean, it's not just expensive, but it's a dog eat dog, eat human real estate market.
I thought selling real estate in New York was actually easier than it is in Arizona.
Interesting.
Because everyone in Arizona is in real estate. In New York, it's kind of like the screw-ups do real estate.
Are you telling me you're a screw-up, Nick?
They want to, people want to work for Goldman. They want to work for JP Morgan. They don't want to work as a real estate guy showing apartments to college kids. That's what I did. And, I felt like it's just easier to get towards the top. Maybe not the very top, but to be in that top pool of real estate agents is much easier. Whereas in Arizona, if you just look up people who own homes in Scottsdale and Paradise Valley, real estate agent, real estate developer, real estate, commercial real estate guy. So it's all real estate people out here.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, as you know, I'm from New York as well. So I never really thought about that. But, and it's good that you brought that up, college kids getting their first apartment, because that is the beginning of our real estate journey. Mm-hmm. We're living at home with our parents, and then at some point we either make enough money or our parents want us out of the house so badly that we get our first place. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that place is with 3 roommates in a 1-bedroom apartment, and sometimes, like I follow this comedian, Jeremy Franco, and he is Indian, and he just moved out of his family's home into his first ever apartment. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea how old he is, but he's obviously doing very well because his apartment is amazing. But anyway, that's your 20s. Mm-hmm. And then maybe in your 30s, you move in with somebody, and so you have a little bit more to play with as far as rent or are able to even buy something. Mm-hmm. Then in your 40s, 30s, 40s, you have kids, so you get that dream home, or you stay in your 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan with your kid's bed in the bedroom with you. And then you get into your late 40s, 50s, your kids go away to college, but you probably, in many cases, hold on to their childhood bedrooms because you want them to have a place to come back to and
Not
sleep.
my parents.
Mine
They
either.
got out so quick.
Mine
As soon
moved.
as the kids were gone, they moved. They sold the house, downsized immediately.
Mine moved before I even got out of college.
Yeah.
I graduated and I didn't have a family home to go back to. I could have lived in Tucson, which I had no interest in doing, so I moved back to New York.
Did you go to U of A?
No, I went to University of Michigan.
Oh,
Long story,
so
but
my dad dropped out of there.
University of Michigan.
Yeah. He didn't graduate. He dropped out, though.
Yeah, so this is like a whole other show. We could talk about childhood trauma and moving, but then you may find yourself single again, as I did, as many of my friends did, in their 50s and 60s, and then you're at this crossroads of where should I live, how should I live, how much real estate debt do I want to take on, how much equity do I need at this stage in my life. So it becomes a very big decision when the kids have left the house, whether you're single or married. How much space do you really need? And you and I had talked about this briefly. I've met a lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s who still want the big house, either because they want their kids to come and stay with them, and the kids may or may not want to do that. Or they're just so used to having a house that they don't know how to downsize. So without naming names or telling personal stories, what have you been seeing as far as real estate buyers and renters since you've started your career in terms of people at the later stages of their lives or the mid stages of their lives, because we're going to live to be 100. And what are people looking for after 50?
So when I was in New York, almost everything in New York, if you own a property, it's an apartment. It's a condo, it's a co-op, it's an apartment. So when I moved back out here to Arizona, I kind of branded myself as the condo specialist, thinking I'd get a lot of guys who were successful in their 30s, 40s. Maybe they want a, nice apartment. Really, I'm seeing a lot of that, a lot of downsizing. So a condo here, like I live at a condo in Old Town. There's a lot of people who just downsized and moved in. So they're older. And, I was kind of thinking it would be the opposite. It would be more like people in their 30s who were successful and they did the condo to keep living the city lifestyle. No, it's a lot more downsizing than that.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Yeah, one of my very first shows was called something like Throw Your Crap Away with a professional organizer. And I'll probably going to be doing, and I did another show about things that matter, because it is tough after accumulating stuff and having kids and having a family. You have enough stuff to fill a 3 or 4 bedroom house. And then I moved from the big family home into a 400 square foot studio in Midtown. And I had a bet going with my daughter that she didn't think I'd be able to do it. And I did do it, but I kind of cheated because I also needed a storage unit and a garage, and there's stuff at the basement of our weekend house. So yeah, I kind of cheated on that. But now I'm in a 600 square foot 1 bedroom, and it's really all the space that I need. Would I like to have a separate office? Yeah, that would be kind of cool, because the pandemic really made that a thing, although I do have a co-working space as well. But what are some of the things, 2-part question, when you're looking to hire an agent or a broker, what would you say are the 3 top criteria you should be looking for when you're about to make a move?
For, say, a person who is looking to hire a real estate agent?
Yeah. You're not a DIYer. I mean, you may be. And, everybody has access to MLS now, multiple listing service. But if you really want somebody to focus as a consultant as you're going through the process, what attributes should you be looking for in that person?
Well, just real quick, I just got into it with a guy the other day. He was telling me, the internet makes real estate agents obsolete. Well, no, because in the 1980s, you had newspaper ads. So you just found the listings in the newspaper, and then you could go to it directly. You never needed a real estate agent to find you listings. That's the easy part. What you need is personal service. So ultimately, the real thing that the number one most important thing is, 1, are they ethical? 2, are they trustworthy? You can't really tell that right away, which is very tough. So when you interview somebody, it should really be someone that you speak to. Hey, what services do you offer? And just, do you get a good vibe? And it's very hard for the average person to know that, just, based off a 20-minute meeting, now I have to commit to this person for 6 months. It's difficult. So that's why I'm always putting myself out there on social media, just to get my face out there. The more people see my face, the more likely they are to trust me. And that's my thinking on it. It is very difficult. You got to just trust your gut, people. If you get a bad feeling about somebody, or if they tell a little white lie about something that doesn't even matter, they're probably going to tell lies about big things too. So you just have to think about that.
The other thing that I found to be really important when working with an agent or a broker is it's got to be somebody who you don't mind spending a big block of time with.
Yes.
And, I don't know whether you drive clients around to see properties or they take their own cars, but I would also caution people, if you're going to be driving with an agent or a broker, you should make sure that they're a safe driver, because we were once going out to see houses and the broker almost got us killed. Like, she was just not a good driver, didn't know where she was going. It was not a good look for somebody who works in the industry.
Yeah. My excuse, I tell people, I don't have insurance that covers me for you. So if you have your own car, that's fine. I mean, if you really need to hop in my car, okay, we'll do it. But I don't have commercial insurance. So best to take separate cars.
Smart. So trust, likability. The other thing that I've also found is you need to be working with somebody who truly gets what it is you're looking for. That people have different tastes in how they live, and they have different quirks. I mean, you and I talked about the fact that I am fixated on having a hall closet because I always had one in New York, and it's habitual. That's where I keep my coats, even though we don't need them now because it's 115 degrees. But in the winter, when I come in from a day of hiking or I've been out wearing a jacket, I don't like to walk all the way through to my apartment to hang it up. My hiking boots, my pool floaty, like all of that is in my hall closet. So I either, and again, this sounds really trivial, but I either need to be working with someone who's going to show me properties with hall closets, or to have the imagination to say, you have enough room in the hall of this condo to be able to build a closet. And hopefully they would have enough connections locally that they could recommend somebody who could build it for me. Because the best real estate agents and brokers that I've worked with have also been really helpful at navigating a new part of the city or town that I may not have lived in before.
Yes.
When we've bought our first house in the burbs, I remember calling our broker, Marilyn, all the time. Do you have an electrician? Do you have a plumber? Do you have somebody who could change a light bulb that's up on the top of a high ceiling? So you become very dependent on the agents and brokers in your life, especially when you're relocating.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big thing is actually seeing things in person, because real estate is kind of like art. You have to see it and feel it.
And smell it.
And smell it. If it smells bad, smell will kill anything. People don't want to buy something that smells bad, even if it's perfect. So, just knowing, hey, this is going to look much better in person, because everybody can see the listings on Zillow, but you see it on Zillow, you don't actually know, right? It's going to feel different when you go and see it in person than what you imagine it might be from even a virtual tour that allegedly shows everything, but it only shows the best parts. So actually seeing things and knowing, hey, this part of town, this block is weird. This property, I've actually toured this property before. I've toured a property from this builder, so I know they build things this way. That will definitely help you.
And how do you deal with clients who have totally unrealistic expectations? I mean, Arizona is not a cheap real estate market.
It used to be.
I know.
When I grew up here.
I know, but it's not, alas, it's not anymore. I mean, compared to New York, it still is. But if someone says, oh, I want a 4-bedroom house and my budget is $300,000, how do you steer them in a direction that works for you, works for them, works for everybody?
I mean, if someone is that unrealistic, like, hey, I want, something for $100 a square foot, I would just have to politely say, I'm not sure I could help with that. But most people are open to being educated. That's really what we're here for. We're a resource. So it's just educating people. guiding them along the way, and eventually they'll get to that point.
Or sending them to another part of Arizona. I mean, if you go out to like Buckeye or yesterday.
Buckeye's not going to have $100 a square foot.
No, it's probably not. But yesterday I was in, Litchfield Park seeing my dentist, and there's a lot of, not necessarily my taste, but there's a lot of inventory there that might meet somebody's needs. If you don't have to go to the airport on a regular basis, if you don't really care if you're around civilization, if you don't mind having kids living in your community, or if you want to live in a 55 and older community, there are options. They just may not be in the place that you really want to live.
Yeah, and that's just knowing the local market and advising people and guiding people. The West Valley is not my specialty, but I do work with people who know the West Valley. So I'm more of an East Valley guy.
Yeah, and for people who are listening to this who are not from Arizona, even though Phoenix is, considered a city, it actually, Arizona and the Phoenix area are multiple cities and multiple towns,
tons
each
of cities
with their own personality. There's like a lot of snobbery, the same way there was back in New York, where some people in Manhattan wouldn't date somebody who lived on Long Island or up in Westchester.
That's still true. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, like geographic compatibility is still really big, but here it's like an East Valley, West Valley thing, and I happen to live in Scottsdale, that some people call Snotsdale. Snobsdale. I've heard that as well, but
I've heard both.
I think it's really more about the person and the property than it is. You can't vilify an entire community just because
No.
certain factors.
No, but for the people who don't know, because not everyone's in Arizona, Phoenix is dead center. East Valley is everything east of it. That's where Scottsdale is. Gilbert, Chandler, which is where I grew up. Then West Valley would be west of it. And East Valley, I think it's because Camelback Mountain is in the East Valley and it's right in the middle of Phoenix. I think that's why the East Valley has, more cachet to it. But who knows for sure?
Yeah, and
I'm going to say it's
unlike
because of Camelback.
Manhattan, is considered the cool island. In fact, if you're in New York, you refer to it as the city.
Yeah.
Although the city really is comprised of 5 boroughs. But yeah, I think every city, every town has its equivalent of that real estate snobbery. And as somebody who's buying or renting, I think it's also important, not that I'm doing your job for you, but it's important that people keep an open mind, because if budget and space are your primary focus, then you may need to find a different place to live, because you can't find everything unless you get an incredible deal, something amazing happens. It's usually really, really tough to find something that will check all your boxes all at once, all at the same time that you're ready to move. Yeah.
So I'm going to be working with someone here pretty soon she lives in Scottsdale now, but she wants a bigger house. She has a townhouse now. But she's kind of open to maybe moving to Gilbert. And so when we actually start that process and we go through with it, the first thing I'm going to tell her is, look, if you want to stay in Scottsdale, it's going to be a sacrifice. Your house is going to be smaller. You might not have a pool. You might not even have a garage. It might be one of the carports. And if you're open to going to Gilbert at all, just write Scottsdale off, because you're going to find a much nicer house in Gilbert. So we'll save time just like that. But she has to believe me, right? She has to trust me and know that I'm telling her the truth, because that is the truth. Scottsdale is more expensive than Gilbert, and we'll save a lot of time if we do that.
And it's a process, because, you might say that and somebody's first reaction was absolutely not. I'm not going to tell my friends that I live in Gilbert. But then if you go, and I'm not saying this about your client, but, if someone said to me when I was, 18, you're going to grow up and live in New Jersey, I would have said, are you out of your mind? No, I'm a city girl. I'm not living in New Jersey. But then Hoboken started becoming gentrified, and now I couldn't even
Hoboken's pretty cool.
Now I couldn't even afford to live in Hoboken, even if I wanted to, or Jersey City for that matter. So sometimes moving into a place that's not considered the cool place at the time could wind up being a good investment long term.
It's funny. One of my clients' friends from New York, she's a chef. I haven't talked to her in years, but she posted something the other day. Leah Cohen, shout out Leah. she moved to Jersey City. She said the best pizza she's ever had is in Jersey City. So
I'm
she
not
was in
surprised.
I helped her move to the East Village years ago, but now she's in Jersey City.
And the reality is Jersey City has a view of Manhattan.
And Manhattan doesn't.
Manhattan has no views. It has views of other people in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Who are walking around naked in their apartments, which is, usually what you end up getting when you lease an apartment in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So for somebody buying their very first home, we talked about sort of the later stages of life and asking yourself, do I really need room for my kids? Do I really need my grandmother's set of china? Like, how small a space can I live in? Am I a homebody? Do I like to travel? There are all these factors that come into play. But for those people who are buying their first ever home, what advice would you give to them?
Buying their first home. So first-time home buyers, the biggest challenge for them right now is just, can they even afford it, right? Because the average mortgage right now is about 50% more than what they would pay in rent. So right off the bat, they're taking a huge chunk of cash flow and saying, hey, I want to invest in my future. If they have the financial ability to do that, I would tell them to look for the most central location that they can. Scottsdale, Gilbert, Chandler, East Valley have very limited places to build homes. So the inventory is kind of capped at this point in those East Valley, Central Phoenix, even Glendale in the West Valley. Inventory is kind of capped. We're not going to have too many more new communities. So it's going to be a great long-term investment. And you can build a good life there. It's just, can you afford it? If it's your first home, rent is a lot less expensive than a mortgage right now. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, and things like, and again, as somebody who's been through all the stages of home buying and home renting, you also want to be in a community where your kids can be happy and they can have other friends in the neighborhood and they don't have to walk a million miles to get to the school bus, and the school is decent and the kids in the school are, you never know if the kids in the school are going to be nice or smart, but, do your homework on the school district as well.
Yeah. In Arizona, and no offense to anybody, I grew up in Arizona, smart might be off the table.
Ooh, cold.
I'm one of the, I'm a product of the public schools here, so I'm not winning no science awards.
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges that we have as a state, is the quality of our school system is not the best. But Hoboken, when we first moved there, the school system wasn't even accredited, which is why we left Hoboken to go to the burbs when I was pregnant with my older daughter. And now there are a million school options in Hoboken. So I think...
Were they not accredited in like the biggest city or metro area in the whole country?
Well, it is now, but back then, this was, 1980s, and they were Hoboken was still just getting gentrified.
Oh,
and it could happen. My old high school was closed by the New York City Board of Ed, not because of poor performance, but nobody really wanted to go there anymore. So schools, go in fits and starts, and it's really like anything else. Like, it's like taking a job or deciding to move in with somebody. You just have to do your homework and know what you're about to do. And, real estate, you could make a really expensive mistake if you're not working with the right agent or broker or not doing your own homework.
Agreed.
So, and I keep in mind that our listeners are not just in Arizona; they're all over, hopefully all over the world. But any predictions of what's going to happen in real estate over the next 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years. Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be buying real estate myself and just investing in it, right? It's going to be kind of flat until interest rates change. That's really the big thing. Either interest rates will change, and once that starts happening, prices will increase because we'll see more people who are like, hey, I can sell my home and afford a new one now. Or people will say, oh, I can stop renting because the mortgage isn't that much more. Right now, it's a 50% spread. If that changes, rates come down, then, maybe it's easier for me to buy. I can stomach that extra payment for the investment. So we're stuck on interest rates right now. Crazy thing in Arizona, and I just posted about this the other day. The 10 million and up range is seeing the most increase in activity, right? And those people are paying cash. So the really, really expensive stuff is where Arizona is the strongest right now. And the price points that are more dependent on financing, like let's say around 1 million or even just under 1 million, those are being a little tougher to sell right now.
So any of the $10 million people, are they looking to rent a room to somebody in their basement? I would gladly move in with one of them if I can use the pool and the sauna and, one of the garage bays. This crazy money. I mean, I just love looking at, houses that I know that I will never be able to afford just to.
Never say never.
This is true. My podcast could.
Your podcast could blow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit like and subscribe, people.
Speaking of which, I will, why don't you go first? If somebody wants to connect with you, how can they find you? I mean, you and I met at a party at the podcast recording studio, but I have since started following you on Instagram. I'm a big Ryan Serhant fan. He was the kind of the godfather of using social media in the real estate space. I mean, a lot of people have been doing it, but he did it in a very clever way. And I do think that you stand out among Arizona brokers and agents. Nobody's paying me to say that.
Thank you.
But, there is a sea, as you said, you can't shake a stick in Arizona without hitting a social media marketer, an esthetician, or a real estate agent. Those seem to be the big three. So talk a little bit about how you do distinguish yourself using social media and how people can find you.
So I think the big thing is so when I first came back to Arizona, I worked with a brokerage, new state. I had to reacclimate myself. There are some different things here than there are in New York. So I want to make sure I was comfortable. Went off on my own a few months back. So now I'm back to being on my own. And it's such a freeing thing because I can say whatever I want on social media, right? If you work for a big company, if you work for a brokerage, they don't want you to put yourself out there. Like they do, but they also don't. And when I was with a brokerage, it was always in the back of my mind, like, oh, how is someone in the corporate office in 2 states over going to think about this if they see it? So it kind of holds you back a little bit because you can't really say what you want to say. But now that I'm on my own, that's just a differentiator for me because I can say whatever I want. And I think people appreciate authenticity and it helps build that trust that I talked about that was so important.
Yeah, and I think that is really, really key because I've worked with some of the big brokerage companies and you don't really want, it's not that the company is taking you around to see houses. The company isn't showing up at a closing. No. It's an individual human. So I've always hired the agent or the broker rather than the brand. The brand is only important when it comes to and I don't even think that it's as important anymore because technology is just table stakes now. But I remember back in the day, they would say, oh, we're going to do a video of your house or your apartment. It's like, whoa, that's really cool. Now everybody is doing videos. Although I have to say, and again, I'm not being paid to do this, your home video tours are better than the average bear. They're interesting and you're interesting. And that's what people want. They want to go out and look at homes with somebody who not only knows their shit, but seems to be fun and interesting to hang out with and have a broader perspective.
Thank you. That's my goal. That's what I'm going for. Just trying to.
So what is the name of your brokerage?
T&T.
Easy enough to remember. And your Instagram handle?
Tawillionaire, TAWILLIONAIRE.
So follow Nick. And even if you're not looking to buy a place in Arizona, he's always entertaining, much like you're the Ryan Serhant of the Southwest. And that's meant as a compliment because speaking of people who
I'm a little nicer than Ryan.
Yes, well, publicly, he's very nice. I can't speak to privately. I've known him since before he was like the Ryan Serhant. So I think sometimes with fame and fortune comes assholery. So back in the day, he was a nice guy, but I think that some of that may have gone.
No, we're buds. Shout out to Ryan. I worked with Ryan, so I know him as well. I think he's doing good. I'm glad he went off on his own because I know he had been wanting to go off on his own for a while, and it took him years to do it. So I'm very proud of him that he actually did it and did it. So congratulations, Ryan.
Yeah. Hi, Ryan. I have never had Ryan on my podcast, but I did interview him for a column that I write, and he was lovely. And I know people who work for his new brokerage, and one of the things that he's doing that I think is really genius, and it ties into what you were talking about before. He was never afraid to allow his brokers and agents to become personal brands in their own right. In fact, he's putting a lot of time and energy and training, and he's building out his brokerage offices as production studios so that encouraging his brokers and agents to become personalities in their own right. And trusting that if they are making enough money, if they like working for his agency, that they will stay. And I think the biggest fear that brokerages have when people start building their own personal brands is that they're then going to leave and take all that money with them. But, that's just the world we're living in. So speaking of personal brands, if you would like to follow me, the best thing to do is to obviously listen to my podcast on anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. I'm also putting my episodes up on YouTube so you could see our lovely faces on camera. A lot of people have told me that they like to watch podcasts as opposed to listening to them. So I'm checking all the boxes. And then if you follow me on Instagram, my handle is theonswitch, TheonSwitch, because my day job is marketing, consulting, and writing and professional speaking. So that is how I make a living, so I can afford to podcast. And if you would like to be a guest, I have 4 slots open before something spectacular happens this fall. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but just
It's big.
It's big. It's thegeezerproofer@gmail.com. And I have a simple form that you could fill out to apply to be a guest. And remember, limited inventory, 4 slots open. So act fast. I feel like I'm selling Ginsu knives or something on QVC. But I would love people to engage with me, and feel free to give me stars, reviews, comments, questions, suggest topics you'd like me to cover in the future. And thank you so much, Nick, for being a guest on my podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I think I'm pretty cool.
Buy a house.
Buy
a
a
$10
house,
million house.
Buy a 10+ million, because those prices are going up. No, but thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate all the kind words and the support that you've given me. So I'm sure the show will do great.
Well, thank you. And if I do decide to buy something in Arizona, which may happen, you'll be the first call that I make. So thank you.
Beautiful.
So remember, be a beezer, not a geezer, no matter how old you are, and continue listening and sending me fan mail, or troll me if you don't like what I'm saying, and give me some constructive criticism. So have a great day, boys and girls. Peace out.